What's going on, folks? Welcome to Kids Today with Dr. Kamal Jones. I am Dr. Kamal Jones. It is wonderful to be back with you again. For today's episode, we have a very special guest. The man needs no introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce him anyway. New York City public school teacher and environmental activist. He is a union rep. He is a man, a myth, a legend, all rolled up in one. A great friend of mine as well. Honored to have him on the show as our first guest today. This is Mr. James Booth. Give it up for Mr. James Booth, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Booth, good to see you, sir.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Hopefully not the last guest.
Yes, hopefully not the last. I wanted to kind of start with you just from the teacher side of things, because I feel like that's kind of your core.
Yes.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how you think about the fact that, you know, the kids that are in front of you, these are the people who will be really bearing the brunt of the climate crisis, who will be really facing this thing head on. How do you think about their future? How do you think about empowering them with the tools necessary to actually make a impact in this space?
This is a really unique time where there's so much happening, so many headlines, and it's all happening in their phone, in their face 24/7. And it's so easy, I think, more than ever. I think when we grew up, we had a sense of hope. Like, we're like, oh, like this thing can change and this thing can change. Hope and change were the Obama slogans that we grew up around too.
What a time.
Yeah, but I think now it's growing up in this time. It's just easy to feel overwhelmed because they might not know how to engage in the work. They might not know that they can engage in work. So I think reframing this as, is this a global problem that will affect everyone, particularly if we don't take more action soon? Yes, it is. But then we talk about the action, and we talk about how this is an opportunity. How many industries, how many jobs, whether you be a solar panel technician or somebody who is working in energy efficiency, or someone working in government, or any job, right? There is a climate space in quite literally any job. Your job could be a solution in the future.
That's one of the things that's like most mind-boggling to me, just on the political side of things, that I just frankly do not understand, where you'll have a lot of folks who are very anti-climate, right? Trump is anti the Paris, climate accords, things of that nature, not realizing that this industry is going to happen with or without us.
Sure. And if anything, abdication by this administration of that role is just economically not a great strategy, because now all of those solar jobs, those wind jobs, geothermal, electric vehicles, all of that is going to go to other places because that demand is still there. So that transition is going to happen, and we can choose to be at the forefront of it and have a boon to our economy or not. And that's kind of where the choice that's being made right now on the federal level.
For as long as I've known you, you've been really connected in this space, whether it's directly in climate work or other wildlife-related work. For you, what brought you to this space? What really has fueled that?
Sure. The Greenberg Nature Center, actually, and I would say the Bronx Zoo as well. So I think if you're looking for a way to introduce your children in your life to this type of work, it doesn't start by necessarily going to lobby Congress, right? It starts by making a connection. And so when I was young, I was fortunate where we grew up. We had a really nice nature center. We could go and see animals running around, being like nature, wildlife, and then also like the Bronx Zoo right down the road, seeing so many animals that don't live around here. And for some folks that live in urban areas, it might feel like there's not a lot of nature around, but there is. Like, cities are also ecosystems too. So trying to find, like, whether it's your local park, botanical garden, your zoo, ideally if it's like a conservation focused zoo, all of them will have resources like telling you how to engage with the wildlife in your city and the surrounding areas. And I think that's a great place to start.
Tell me a little bit about some actions that you are taking.
I think the easiest place to start there is an app that you can download from the App Store on your phone. It's called Climate Action Now. And basically, it lets you do instant activism right from your phone. You plug in your information, like where you live, your email, and then it connects you with whoever you are represented by in your government. And it also connects you to businesses, corporations, connects you to news outlets. So all of these groups, there's like pre-formulated emails and petitions and other things that you can send out to them directly. There's an option to call as well. So emailing, calling, signing petitions. It's a great intro, I think, for kids as well, just showing them like what does civic engagement look like. The cool thing about it too, it's points based, so you get points for every action you take, and then they will plant a tree after you get a certain number of points. Beyond that, I'm involved with a couple of different organizations. I'd say the one I'm most affiliated with currently is the Climate Reality Project. It's actually where I heard about the Climate Action Now app. So it's an organization, it was started by Al Gore. Strong focus in the US, but in other countries as well. They do trainings all over the world, multiple times a year. They had a training that I attended in New York City, and it was such a great space because I think regarding whether you're working on climate, any issue, where you're trying to make social change, it can feel very lonely, feel very isolating. And sometimes you feel like you're screaming into the void, and even your friends who care, you wonder like, do they care that much? Or are they just doing it for me? Or, like I wish I had more people who were as passionate about this as I am. And to be in a room with several thousand people that are just as, if not more, passionate and perhaps, a little intense about this stuff, is really such a warm feeling and so motivating. And so I'm affiliated with the New York chapter now. Currently, our main focus for advocacy is working to protect Local Law 97, which is a law that was passed a few years ago in New York City, mainly focusing on the decarbonization of buildings, which is the number one source of greenhouse emissions in New York City. So there's another bill that's been introduced to try to repeal Local Law 97. So we're currently working to make sure that Intro 772 does not get passed. And currently it's losing support. There were people who signed on for it in City Council that have now removed their support for it, and we're continuing to do that work. So if you're looking for something tangible and you live in New York City, Local Law 97, supporting that, going against Intro 772 is a great place to start.
What's the best way for people to support that?
If you're New York based, reaching out to your city council person. And then we at the Climate Reality Project, we know who is signed on to it and we know who's not. But honestly, even if you don't have that information, it's always good to just get in touch with your elected officials, ask if they support this or not, Intro 772. And if they do, asking them to reconsider because of all the progress that Local Law 97 has had so far. Another issue is with the climate crisis, the way that we talk about it. I think when it first came out, it was broadcast as a very global problem, which it is. A lot of people were like, oh, the world is getting hotter and the polar bears are losing their habitat and they're drowning in the North Pole. And that's all true and it's all important. But I think a lot of people who are more focused on their nuclear community didn't see this as something that affected them. And so I think really changing the messaging to Local Law 97 doesn't just stop global climate change by reducing emissions. It also improves air quality in New York City. One of the largest causes of death in the world is air pollution, right? And that's directly connected to the fossil fuel industry. So when we decarbonize, we also make the air cleaner. Your field, we have less issues with asthma and other respiratory problems. And I think making that message local is very important. So people who live in New York City who aren't going to see a polar bear, but they will see record high heat every year. They'll see people get hospitalized for that and potentially be very seriously or fatally hurt from that. On that same note of air pollution, at the state level, in New York, a bill has been introduced in the Assembly. It's called the Healthy Homes Right to Know Act, and basically it will require the labeling of gas stoves as air pollutant hazards whenever they're sold. And again, the purpose of this would be to just let consumers know that when you're buying a gas stove, it is a direct impact on your respiratory health of you and your family, particularly children who are more vulnerable to developing asthma. That's another action that can be taken, and then contacting your state official in New York and saying that you support this, your assembly member, is a great way to have an impact on that.
If people want to be able to be tapped into this work, what are some resources that you recommend, places where people can start?
Sure. I think the first thing is to connect, because trying to take on this work yourself, it can be done and it can be fruitful, but I think it's more hopeful, it's more energizing, and it's more fun, frankly, when you're doing it with other people. So connecting to whatever your local organization is. It could be the Climate Reality Project, it could be the Sunrise Movement, it could be your local Audubon Society chapter. Fridays for Future is another great one for younger folks. There are so many different groups involved. It might be a particular group that is only functioning in your town. Or maybe you start one and you have a bunch of people you talk this to and you're just like, hey, there's 8 of us here that we're always talking about this. Why don't we form a group and start doing something about it? So finding a group, I think, is huge. From there, a couple things I mentioned. So the Climate Action Now app is a great place to start. In the credits, we'll also be sharing out a Google Doc, which is something I'm compiling, which shows a lot of different ways to get involved, allies in this fight, resources, educational resources, and also activist actions that can be taken. So it's a great place to start. It'll be something I'm updating constantly, so there'll always be something to check, something to do. Also, there's a great scientist, Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. She is a marine biologist. She also was co-host of a great podcast, which is no longer running, but is still a great source of information called How to Save a Planet, which is on all streaming services still. I don't work for them. But it's very hopeful and it's very informative at the same time. So Dr. Johnson has a Venn diagram, 3 circles, and basically helps you kind of figure out what your role in all this is, right? So off the top of my head, it's what are you good at, what do you enjoy doing, and what work needs to be done? And then finding the intersection of those 3 things is what your climate action is. So for some people, that might be creating a local group. It might be calling elected officials. It might be teaching. It might be creating art around this. There's music around this. There's so many different things that can be done because it is such a broad problem. There are infinite solutions to this problem. And that's what I always tell my students. We talk about the direct cause and the things that contribute to the emissions. And then we talk about the effects, the different weather effects, health effects, environmental effects. But then for all of those, there's 10, 20 solutions. There's mitigation solutions to try to reduce these emissions, reduce these impacts. And there's adaptation to help people prepare for the worst, just in case. And there's even board games. There's a board game called Energetic, which is New York City focused, but I think regardless of where you are, it's a great tool to just kind of get an idea for how an energy transition works and the challenges that come with that, balancing political opinion and grid stability. And it's great. And it can be fun and it can be a little frustrating at times, but I think that's the work. And I think looking at this as this problem overall, this very big problem, as really just a myriad of opportunities and ways that we can shift our world, not just to be safe from climate change, but also to have cleaner air, cleaner water, and to just make the most and keep safe this beautiful world that we live in, which is the only one that we know about in all of existence, right? Which is such a miracle in itself.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, brother. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show. Everyone give Mr. James Booth a round of applause. Yeah, woo! We will catch y'all next time on Kids Today, and we will definitely share these resources in the description box so you guys can check them out, see what works for you. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Please leave a comment in the section below. We want to hear about what kind of climate action you've been involved in, any ideas that you have, the way kids in your household or in community are talking about climate, and we would love to tap in with you. All right, we'll catch you next time on Kids Today.